Warning: the Not Thought podcast contains language and content that may not be suitable for younger audiences. Listener discretion is advised. There will also be spoilers for various anime throughout the course of this episode. Please use caution in case we discuss a series you haven't finished. Finally, the opinions expressed are those of the individual participants and may not reflect the Not Thought podcast as a whole. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to Nut Talk, where a group of nerds come together to talk about the latest and greatest in anime. And it's that time of the year again. It's blazing hot. Everything's on fire. Global warming is really bad. It's summer. It's time for more summer at the movies.
Oh, that's not where I thought you were going with this at all. I thought this was going to be it's that time of the year again. It is protest global warming season. Yes, and we're going to be covering Captain Planet. Yes, we're going to be covering the dub of Captain Planet to celebrate stopping global warming. But I like your idea better. Summer at the movies is way more upbeat.
Yeah, don't worry. We will be talking about it instead of subject. We'll be talking about terrorism.
Oh, goody! Oh, everyone's favorite topic. Yay!
We're here to talk about a very interesting movie, or rather, a pair of movies.
Mm-hmm.
The recycle of the Penguindrum films, which, for those who don't know, are compilation versions of the Penguindrum TV series from 2000 and... It was either 2011 or 2013.
The series came out in 2011. And then I think the movies came out to celebrate the 10-year anniversary. So they were in production to be released around 2021, I believe.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, so very fitting time to talk about it then. Now that the English dub is finally available, because we never really got a chance to talk about the TV series in the whole 10,000 years we've been doing this podcast. So I'm glad that you suggested this as our Summer at the Movie entry, because oh boy, are there thoughts to be had.
For those who don't know, the TV series was originally picked up by Sonzai Filmworks, and it was dubbed, and there are a couple of things I should probably disclose before we get into this, because I'm probably going to be pretty passionate about this. First and foremost, Penguindrum is one of my favorite anime, period. I don't know if it's still the favorite, but it's at least, top 3 for me, so I have very strong opinions about this series. And the second thing you should know is that neither of us were particularly big fans of the dub for the TV series.
Oh, no. This, for those who maybe are a little on the younger side, the dub for this was made in that very awkward period for Sentai Filmworks where they hadn't quite reestablished themselves after ADV's collapse in 2009. And so they were very short on dubbing staff and cautious about how many projects they were going to be dubbing. There were a lot of sub-only releases around that time. So the expectation for Penguindrum, being this very complex, Ikuhara-written, highly symbolic series, was that it would be very hard to dub correctly, as someone had already tried to dub the Revolutionary Girl Utena series a time before that. So we're like, okay, just don't be like that. And, well, unfortunately, it didn't quite capture, I think, what we expected an English translation of this series to be. It was a little flat, a little goofy sounding, and not quite up to the caliber of the subject matter that we're about to talk about.
So when these movies came out, I was definitely interested in the prospect of potentially getting a new dub, and wondering who was going to end up picking this up. For a while, I speculated it might be G-Kids or something, just because there was a re-release of the TV series a couple of years ago by Anime Limited, and it was apparently done in conjunction with the president of G-Kids, so I sort of assumed G-Kids was going to come and swoop in and get this, but nope. It ended up back with Sentai, and where you would expect they'll probably get back the cast for the TV series or at least as many of them as they can, because there's a couple of folks they either can't get back or would definitely not get back for reasons we're not going to talk about.
Yeah, should not get back. Yeah, absolutely. I guess we should also preface that when we criticize the TV series, it wasn't really the actors themselves, because the original TV series was full of actors who have done really good stuff, including plenty of great stuff for Sentai. We're going to lay the blame entirely on the direction from that series. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah. This ended up back with Sentai, and for some reason or another, it has a completely different cast from the TV series.
Entirely, yeah. Every character, every bit part. Maybe the engineer is the same. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, all the people we're going to talk about entirely different.
Yeah. There are a couple of actors for the TV series who are in here, but they're in like bit parts. So
yeah,
definitely just very curious. I do kind of wonder what went on there, but at any rate, we are here to talk about the dub. So I guess
who are we, by the way? I don't think we introduced who we are.
Yeah. I'm Jet, and I'm joined by my buddy Noah Kalu.
Welcome to Rock and Roll Night. Welcome to Rock and Roll Night. You're a rock and roll man.
Yep. So as we briefly mentioned at the beginning, this is a podcast where we discuss and review English dubs, and that's basically what we're here to do today. So, as always, we're going to start off with talking about the folks behind the scenes, the ADR stuff.
Before we do that, can we briefly describe what the movie is? Because there are probably people out there who haven't actually seen Penguindrum before.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? Let me go back to ANN and pull up the plot description. So, Hibari Takakura passes away after going on a trip with her brother's twins, Kanba and Shoma. She was, however, miraculously saved by a spirit in a penguin-shaped hat. And in return for her extended life, the twins must search for an item known as the Penguindrum, with the aid of 3 penguins which are only visible to the siblings. And boy, is that plot description, really only scratching the surface.
That is the bare bones thing. Girl passes out, brought back to life by, you heard it correctly, spirit of a penguin hat that you can get at an aquarium. And yes, that is only one of about 5 different plots going on in this whole thing, mixed in with characters who are in unrequited love relationships, characters who enter into relationships to hide who they truly are, terrorism, and symbolism about smashing society and not getting caught in the vicious cycle of abuse like you were when you were a child.
Lots of stuff about family and both how found family can be important, and also how real family can hurt you a lot.
And all wrapped up with cute anthropomorphic squishy penguins who don't talk.
Yep. So we are gonna have quite a bit to talk about, but as mentioned before, we are going to start this discussion by talking about the ADR staff for the dub.
Mm-hmm. So, who are the lucky chums who got to turn this from Japanese into English?
Yep. So for our ADR director, we have John Swayze. Woohoo! And for the ADR script, we have Marta Beckel.
Hell yeah!
So John Swayze is a pretty regular director in Sentai and has worked on dubs such as After the Rain, Vinland Saga Season 1, and Review Starlight.
Another show that has tenuous relationships to Ikuhara stuff, because that's also a surrealist, symbolism-heavy series with a talking giraffe.
Yep.
You could have called that show Giraffe Drum.
It is. That was definitely very clearly taking some cues from Ikuhara stuff. Not quite as dense, but it was pretty interesting.
Well, I mean, they're both heavily inspired. Like, Ikuhara is heavily inspired by Takunozaku review, stage performances, and that show was literally about characters in that kind of stage performance.
That really does explain everything, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Ikuhara's influences are he's very heavily influenced by stage stuff, not really anime, which is very surprising that he ended up directing like Sailor Moon and then creating Utena and Penguindrum and Sari no Zanmai and that kind of stuff. You'd think he'd be more of a who was the person who directed the Lion King Broadway adaptation? Julie Taymor. Like, I think that would be more of his forte.
Yeah, boy, it's really kind of weird wondering what it would have been like on Earth 2, where, like, where they didn't reject all its ideas with Sailor Moon as they, like, let him kill off, God, which characters in Sailor Moon were he trying to kill off, I think? I think it might have been the Outer Guardians, I can't remember.
I don't either, because I haven't actually seen that far into Sailor Moon, aside from tertiary clips. Speaking of writing, what has Marta Bechtel done in the past?
She's probably the most regular scriptwriter in Sentai and has done scripts on such shows as Akuma Maid War, Food Wars, and Made in Abyss.
Amongst many other things.
Lots and lots of stuff.
Yeah. And for good reason, too. I remember when we covered Food Wars, gave good props for her writing on that. Don't think we've covered Made in Abyss yet, although we probably should at some point. Very different shows from this series, though. If we could just jump into how to talk about this. Well, first, I'll say that I do think that the direction and writing was better in this set of recap films than it was in the TV show. That being said, I don't think it was their best work. I don't think this is John and Marta's best work overall. Because
I agree.
It's hard to match the tone. Like, this is characters are talking about one thing, but it actually symbolizes something else, while the visuals in the background don't quite match what they're talking about. There is a linear plot, but you have to be paying very close attention to the jump between flashbacks, the insertion of symbolic characters and side characters that represent other things. There's ghost characters that are like, why are you even here? And so with that in mind, I feel like John's direction to the actors was play this as straight as possible. Like, ignore all the wacky, surrealist shenanigans going on in the non-linear storytelling and just play this straight, which is a respectable way to handle material, but I feel like it kind of misses the opportunity to lean into the surreal, over-the-topness of it, because the content matter is about some very deep, emotional things.
Yes, it did feel like they were maybe playing it a little straighter than they could have. And the direction also, the direction does feel a little weird because, I've definitely heard a lot of stronger dubs from John Swayze, some of which I just mentioned, like After the Rain and Midnight Talk Season 1 were, like, really good dubs. I would consider among the best Sentai has put out, so... This actually sounds a little rougher around the edges, which I don't know if it's maybe is like John kind of struggling to maybe grasp what the material was going for, but it does sound pretty rough starting out. Having said that, I will say this, and it is kind of weirdly similar to how I felt with the TV series. I felt like it did pick up rather notably in the second movie.
Do you think that's because the actors like grasp the concept better, or just because the material in the second half lent itself more to what we're used to in anime dubbing to begin with?
Yeah, probably a little bit of both. Like I do enjoy the first half of Penguindrum a lot, but a lot of it is just kind of very clear setup for what the second half does, because the real meat of the story is simply in the second half of the series.
Mm-hmm.
So in that respect, it does kind of make sense that is where the dub notably picks up. But the first half is a lot rougher around the edges than I would have expected from something John Swayze directed, and that is a little disappointing. But there are some performances here I like, and I did walk away from it with a better impression than I did with the TV series dub. So in that respect, I am at least like somewhat pleased.
Well, you had a better opinion because it was less time, right?
Yes, yeah. So I do wonder exactly how much time they had to work on this, which maybe might also contribute to some of the roughness with the first movie.
You think that the ADR staff in English was rushed for time?
As a, I mean, it's possible because these are movies, so like, I don't know exactly how much time they would want to spend on something like this. But again, like, I don't know, and unless you're in the studio, you can't really know for sure. It's just me speculating.
I mean, it is possible that the amount of dialogue compared to your average movie was higher than other movies we've seen, especially ones dubbed by Sentai. So I can imagine that that lent itself to maybe not getting as many takes or trying as much variety in the performances in the booth. And that's purely speculation. If I'm wrong, John, anyone in the comments, please tell me. But there did seem to be like a very uniform tone in the direction, especially in the first half, that didn't lend itself to a lot of variation, even when the scenes themselves required some variation.
Yeah, yeah. And as far as the script goes, I did think it was solid, but it does kind of, and funnily enough, considering this is an Ikuhara thing, I did feel like it was maybe a little more literal than it maybe needed to be. Which is kind of funny because technically the script for the first Penguindrum TV series was also kind of like that.
Yeah.
But the problem there was that the translation was just kind of terrible to begin with, so there wasn't really a whole lot they could do there.
Well, I appreciated some of the writing choices in this where it wasn't so straightforward. Like, there's a scene near the beginning where they're having dinner together, the three main characters, and Kanba just kind of says, like, this soup is rockin', or something like that. And it was like, that's not what a term I've heard in a dub since, like, 2003. So I appreciated that. But outside of small bits like that, there's a whole lot of, like you said, straightforward adaptation writing. It's English. Like, it is not stilted dialogue, and the way that they're saying it does sound normal, but it is very literal, probably because they understood that the audience needs as much straightforward translations of what the characters are feeling and talking about, that any deviation from that may lead to a misinterpretation of the themes. Because
yeah. I mean, it is fair, but there has been like a creative script for an Ikuhara thing that actually worked. Sorry, it's on mine, which
yes.
Uncoincidentally I still consider to be the best sub an Ikuhara thing has ever gotten.
I haven't watched Yuri Kuma Arashi in a while, but I remember finding that to be a pretty good adaptation as well.
Yuri Kuma Arashi was like really good, but it was also just kind of like it was a perfectly fine dub, but it wasn't like the most amazing thing. Stars on by I thought was like a little more inspiring as a dub.
Yeah, and I think that was benefited by the fact that Yuri Kuma Arashi was a little more repetitive in the scenes. Like, they recycle a lot of the same imagery and lines from the characters a lot in that. Whereas with Sari Zanmai, there is repeated scenes. Like, there's the otterly sexy scene, or there's the transformation sequences. But there's a lot more variety in the individual episodes, and then the grand theme at the end lends itself to a lot more liberal interpretation. Whereas Yuri Kuma Arashi was like, lesbianism is frowned upon in society, and that's not a good thing. And it was like, this is very not subtle at all. Like, from the opening, you can tell exactly what the show is about. Whereas in this show, they're just all over the place. I really feel like Martha had the challenge of adapting 5 major themes that were in this movie and making them palatable to the viewers. And she did that by not really giving any of the characters different ways of talking. I kind of feel like, putting aside the performances from the actors, that all of the characters kind of deliver lines and speak in roughly the same ways to each other.
Yeah, I would say so.
The thing I will praise, though, absolutely, is the parts where the show's supposed to be funny. They are, because Ikuhara's brand of funny is like deadpan funny. There's a handful of scenes, like there's a scene where Ringo needs to get some frog eggs, And the only way to do that is to have a teenage boy lay down and have the frog lay the eggs on his back. Yes, that is very gross. But the way that she kind of breaks it to Shouma that he needs to help out with this is like, you heard us. You heard what the book had to say. Now strip down.
That was a good bit.
It was a good bit of levity. Did not enjoy watching the actual frog scene entirely, but yeah, that was a nice little bit of... Yeah, we'll have a little bit of humor in here in between our stalking and trying to make a love potion because, yeah, we need a little bit of levity.
The Ringo stuff in general was probably the wackiest part of the show.
It was. I remember it being wackier in the TV show, but only because she had more episodes, so there's, like, more attempts that she had. Like, we got to see, like, the escalation go further and further. And in this, we just see, like, the main thing she does. We see her stalking under the floorboards. We see her bringing the curry over. We see her getting the love potion made up, and then the ultimate resolution of that unfortunate potion.
Do kind of regret we couldn't get a lot of the, like, really wacky Ringo faces, but we got a decent amount.
Poor girl.
Yeah.
I wonder if the fact that Ringo is the Japanese word for apple is going to be significant later in this discussion.
Oh boy.
I wonder.
With that, we're going to be getting into our cast. Thankfully, despite the fact that this is essentially compilates a movie of a 24-episode series, there actually aren't that many important characters, so we can more or less split this into two sections.
Mm-hmm.
So for our first section, we're going to be talking about the supporting cast. We have Momoko Okamine, Sanetoshi, the baby penguin, who is a new character for this movie.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for pointing
a new character in quotation marks.
Yeah. I was like, I don't remember that character design from the TV show, but I think you're going to get into an explanation of what they were in the original series, and yeah. Proceed.
Yep, and then we have Keiju Tabuki and Yuri Tokikago. So Momoko is the older sister of Ringo, who died in... Okay, alright, you know what, we might as well just get this out of the way now. So there's a lot of imagery in this show that uses the number 95. And that isn't just a random number, that is it is supposed to be symbolic of 1995.
Which, as we all know, is the year that Toy Story came out, and is the same number that is on Lightning McQueen. So that's clearly what they're referencing, right?
Not quite. It is a reference to the 1995 sarin gas attacks in Japan, which was a terrorist attack carried out by a group called Shinkyo. If you don't know who they are, you might have actually seen what their leader looks like in anime. If you've ever seen the Mochi Mochi Jesus Asu image, that's actually the leader of Shinkyo.
Yeah. And those who maybe don't remember the time period, just to reference how bad that attack was, because it wasn't just like, ooh-hoo, little bit of explosions. No, like, it was so bad that the production of Neon Genesis Evangelion actually had to change some of the plot points in their episodes they were planning, because the terrorism subplot that they were working towards was too similar to what actually happened in real life, and they didn't want to get that close to real life.
That was a real life incident, and it's referenced really heavily throughout the show, and is a pretty important plot point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep, so going back into that, Momoko was a victim of the gas attacks, mm-hmm. and as we find out, and as we discover later on, she actually has a mysterious power to alter destiny using her diary, and it's never really explained why that is. It's just kind of something we have to roll with, and obviously, I mean, it's hard to say what the exact allegory with her is, but funny enough, considering this actually did come out in the same year as Madoka Magica, because she's also basically a magical girl Jesus when you really think about it.
Yeah. I'm not sure if anyone's ever classified Penguindrum as a magical girl show, but yeah, that Madoka comparison crossed my mind as well while rewatching this.
Yeah.
So
So, yep. So continuing, we have Sanetoshi, who was in fact the main villain of the TV series. He doesn't have quite as much main presence here, but he's introduced as a mysterious doctor who, after Hibari collapses a second time midway through the story, he shows up to offer a special kind of medicine that will help Hibari, but also doesn't really. And as we discover later on, he seemingly seems to have a connection to the Takakura's parents. But as we find out, he is in fact a ghost, and I mean this quite literally. He is a ghost, and symbolically, he is kind of supposed to be a sort of literal metaphor for a ghost of the past, and the idea that you cannot escape the past no matter how hard you try. That's kind of what he's going for.
that's a really good explanation. Absolutely.
Yeah. And continuing, we have the baby penguin, who is initially introduced as a new character who is kind of a little helper for Momika, but midway through the little baby penguin's introduction, it gets hit with a mysterious sticker and then gets possessed. For a while, you don't know who's possessing the penguin, but as he speaks more, you kind of realize, oh yeah, it's Sanetoshi possessing the penguin.
Mm-hmm. Yep, just putting the brakes on the main character's attempts to heal their sister, to basically not have a bad existence, and that penguin, you just kind of hate that penguin.
Yeah, just very mean and decided to make Sanetoshi adorable for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And continuing, Tabuki is a high school teacher who's Shoba's homeroom teacher, and he's initially introduced into the story as being stalked by Ringo, who is obsessed with him for reasons we will later get into. And initially, it just kind of seems like he's on the wrong end of that and doesn't have any other particular connection to the characters. But then, as we discover later on the story, he was childhood friends with Momika, who helped him out after he kind of had a very rough relationship with his mother, which we'll probably talk about in a bit.
Yeah.
So after Momika died in the accident, he's obviously pretty broken up about that. And so during the second half of the story, he decides to take revenge on Shouma and the others. And then we have Yuri, who was originally introduced as Tabuki's fiance, and also simply doesn't really seem to have much of a connection to the character starting out. But then we discover she's also a childhood friend of Momika, and she also had a very uncomfortable relationship with one of her parents.
So let's just put the chisel might not actually be a chisel.
Yeah.
That's a big yikes. Also, considering the fact that Yuri here was best friends with another girl, and her name is Yuri, and she's in the Nikuhara series, I'm going to assume that she is straighty McStraight, right?
No, she is, she is quite gay. It isn't, so unfortunately it wasn't able to make its way into the compilation movie for some reason, but she did in fact have a lover who did show up at some point and was actually the person who stabbed Tabuki towards the end of the movie, which isn't explained in the movie itself for some reason. So, if you're wondering who stabbed him, that's who it was. Yeah.
There's just one too many things going on here, and I'm kind of glad. That character was a good wedge in the TV series, but I think we got the main problem with both Yuri and Tabuki in this series, that being childhood traumas, and it's like, that's enough. We don't need to go into any more of how messed up they are.
Yeah, that's fair. So, getting into who plays these characters, for Momika, we have Olivia Swayze. For Sanetoshi, we Dickie Sanders. For the baby penguin, we have, I am actually not sure how to pronounce this, Coakley Saprota. If I pronounce your name wrong, I am really, really sorry.
I think that's right.
For Tabuki, we have Brandon Hertzberger. And for Yuri, we have Patricia Duran.
Mm-hmm.
Olivia Swayze has played such characters as Monica Ibuchi and Ahimura Sora, Echidna in I'm Quitting Heroin, and Yilba in Vinland Saga Season 1. Dickie Sanders seems to be a newer face at Sentai as far as I can tell. The only other credits I could find for him was the King of Midgar and Evidence and Shadow, which seemed to be more of a bit role, so this is the first major thing he's done. And as I couldn't find any like social media stuff for him, I'm not sure, but I think he might be a British actor or like a British descent because he very clearly has an accent.
I'm not sure. I'm seeing a Richard Sanders on behind the voice actors, but considering that they did parts in like Batman Beyond from 1999, I'm going to assume that's not the same actor.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, continuing, Koki Saproda also seems to be a newer face of Sentai coordinator, and this is their only anime credit at the moment, so yeah, that'll be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And Brandon has played his characters as John Montague in The Chevalier d'Eon, Wakuzan in Mid Abyss Season 2, and Ray in the Urusei Yatsura remake. And then Patricia Duran has played such characters as Kaiko Kubo in After the Rain, Dante in Release the Price, and Master in To Love Through Darkness.
Out of curiosity, since you mentioned Urusei Yatsura 2022, have you been watching that?
Oh yeah. I've been enjoying it. I haven't seen I never really watched the original Yatsura, so I don't have too much reference. But I've been enjoying that quite a bit, and I've also been enjoying the dub a lot. It's actually really charming. I would actually say it's probably my favorite simul-dub sometimes ever put out.
Excellent. I mean, you only really need to see one episode of the original Urusei Yatsura to get that show. So if you're giving the 2022 series a recommendation, I'm going to take that as a positive because I've been putting that off until I actually get some of it released, and I know some of it has now. So because I'm like, I know I'm going to be tempted to like binge it, so I was waiting for a back catalog of it to come out.
The dub is completely out now, or at least for as much of the show itself is out. So
Right.
Yeah, if you have the chance, definitely check that out. It's actually a pretty charming dub.
Will do. Right after I finish Bocchi the Rock. That's how behind I am.
Pussy the Rock is a good show. Man, I wish I had a dub.
It is, and I do too. But that's beside the point. The characters in this dub. So I'll give the compliments right up front here. Each of the characters in this section, to my memory, fit the tone that the characters should fit based on their age, based on their personality, and based on their own unique trauma. Olivia's Momoko is a little more lighter sounding, fitting for her savior girl mentality that she has to some of the other characters. Bit of a Jesus metaphor there because she has to die, obviously. And it's unique from Patricia's Yuri, who I love the very forced. I don't want to call it forced happiness, but the smile she gives to the characters when she knows what they're scheming and isn't giving in to to let them by, but isn't calling them out to their face. Like specifically that whole first movie where we have Ringo is trying to get it on with Tabuki, and Patricia's got to be like, "Oh, thank you for coming. You know, Tabuki really enjoyed that curry. Oh, and don't worry, I made sure to put your shoes away, so don't worry about it." Like, I really liked that particular performance. So, yeah, all of the individual characters sounded good for their characters.
I do think Patricia and Brad in particular are kind of interesting because I will say that they probably had maybe I felt the biggest contrast between the first and second movies. Where in the first movie, I actually thought both of them sounded a little rougher than I would have expected. Especially Patricia, because I have heard her in a lot of other things, and I know she generally does good work. So I was a little surprised that her Yuri sounded a little shaky in the first movie, but It definitely improved a lot in the second movie, which I guess makes sense because that's where we kind of go into a lot more with Yuri's character. And specifically, I thought she was really good when it came to the whole bit with Yuri's backstory and everything going on with her and her father. I thought Patricia handled a lot of that really well.
Absolutely, her struggling with hating the story of what is it, the ugly duckling, and the way that she basically tells Momoko to stay away from her because she thinks that Momoko's just being nice because she pities her. Yeah, that was a very good delivery on Patricia's part, and it really is the meatier part of her character that I don't know if I'd say it was less. I don't know if I really say the first part was shakier. Maybe I just didn't notice exactly. But I do agree that it's definitely the most compelling part of Yuri's performance.
And so, and similarly, and similarly, I wasn't quite sure what Brandon was going for in the first movie, but I was really impressed with him in the second movie, particularly during the bit where he kidnaps Himari and threatens Shona and threatens Shona and Kaba. I thought it was really great in that scene.
Well, I think what maybe if what we were expecting when you first heard Brandon's performance was that he was going to have a bit of a younger shonen-y kind of voice, and I get the sense that they told him, no, this is supposed to be like a young teacher character, so don't make him sound too high schoolery. We've already got two high school males in the cast, and not only did that fit to emphasize the age difference, but it also meant that when he had to slip into the more sinister side of him, like you were saying with the kidnapping in the second movie, it didn't come completely out of left field because his voice was already fitting to that pitch of a less nice guy.
I will say it is definitely interesting hearing him compared to looking back on what I remember of the TV series, because if you don't remember, Tabuki actually had two actors in the TV series because for some reason there were a few cast changes between the first and the second half of the TV series. I'm not sure why that is. Apparently that happened with a couple of other Sentai dubs back then. I guess they had a little bit more trouble with, I guess, making sure people were booked. So
Yeah, I get if I remember, I have the original DVD release, and yeah, they released it in two halves. So I'm going to assume that the first release was dubbed in like in a group, and then they released the DVD, and then they worked on the second half. And you're probably right, there was a little trouble keeping people between those two recording sessions for some of the characters. Although I'll admit, I watched the second half of the TV series in sub because I enjoyed it more in sub, so I didn't even notice that there was a different English voice actor for Tabuki in the TV series.
It is kind of funny. It is kind of funny you mentioned that because I actually thought the dub for the second half of the TV series was a little better, partially because it changed directors, which might explain a lot. But and I also thought the second actor for Tabuki was a lot better than TV series. That was Andrew Love. I thought he was a pretty big improvement over the first one, but I also really like what Brandon's bringing to the table. I think I think between the three, he was probably the best casting for the role. I felt.
You know what the part of Brandon's performance that everyone's going to remember from these movies is, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking the drunk on frog juice scenes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, he was a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, that's the goofy fun part where he gives this one night love potion and he's saying like, Ringo, let's be together, Ribbit. Oh, we should Ribbit together, Ribbit.
Yeah. And talking about Yuri and Tabuki together, I thought their whole dynamic in the show was pretty interesting because, as mentioned before, they are introduced as kind of being fiancés, so you would assume they're in love with each other, but then when we discover the second half, they're both kind of so very much not over what happened to Momoka, and they are both still very much in love with her and not so much each other, which I thought was very interesting.
I'm not sure what the inspiration for that was in the original writing, but it does remind me a lot of like in the 50s in Hollywood, like in America, you would have a lot of gay actors who would find a het woman to marry who was totally in on their secret, but went along with it because they knew that their friend would be like ostracized if they were if the people found out they were gay, so they were a good cover for them. And this is like a gender flip version of that, where you've got an actor who is lesbian but can't really reveal that to the world, and so is kind of using Tabuki as a bit of a cover, while also they're both leaning on each other over their trauma over losing their simultaneous best friend when they were younger.
Yeah. So I thought that whole dynamic was pretty interesting, especially since, as we discovered, Tabuki is the one who kind of can't really bring himself to buy into their dynamic, and then kind of does sort of come around in the end, where, or I guess they do kind of accept that they do at least have each other in some sense, so,
Mm-hmm.
and can at least help each other cope with the loss in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought it was a really interesting bit about found family, which is a thing that's going to come up quite a lot in talking about these movies.
Yeah, that's kind of hits you over the head with it. It takes a while for us to figure out that that's the theme, because again, the show is juggling a lot of different themes and imagery. But yeah, if you're watching the movie or the TV show and you're having a hard time following what the show is about, just keep in mind, found family is good. That's the only thing you have to remember as the primary core to the show.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you think of Momika, Olivia's Momika?
I liked it a lot. I do remember Brittany Karbowski was Momika in the TV series.
Okay.
I do like Brittany Karbowski a lot, so I don't remember exactly how good that performance was, but I did. But I did like what Olivia brought to the table. I thought she had. I thought she had the right. I thought she had the right amount of energy, sounding very mysterious and ethereal in a way that was appropriate. I do think she maybe didn't sound quite as exaggerated as I would have expected whenever she, needed to shout imagine or something like that. I kind of thought she could have maybe sounded a little more over the top with stuff like that. But whenever she needed to be dramatic, I thought she was really good. Especially, as mentioned before, with Yuri's backstory. I thought she was really good there, where she was, trying to comfort Yuri and, tell her that, oh, no, it doesn't matter what your father says, you are beautiful.
I find it funny that you're mentioning that the performance in this Momika isn't quite as over the top as maybe you were expecting. Keeping in mind that if it was Brittany Karbowski who was the voice in the original, well, that's already an 11 out of 10. You can't really go higher as far as recognizably over the top performances that are still in character than Brittany. But Olivia had the task, I'm pretty sure, of being directed to be more grounded, less over the top in this performance, and that is fitting for the way that Momika gets her dramatic roles. And she doesn't have funny moments in the show. Nothing about Momika's backstory is funny at all. So yeah, I think it's good that Olivia's performance was more grounded and not as over the top as maybe you were expecting.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't expecting it to be over the top for the whole thing, but I guess, whenever she... I guess they need to, put on the whole, penguin girl act. I thought those parts could have maybe been a little more exaggerated.
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't think about that. The librarian penguin persona that we see at the beginning of the first movie and near the end of the last movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, that... Maybe you're right. Maybe that could have lent itself to being a bit more campy, definitely.
Yeah, that probably is that's honestly really the only mark I have against the performance, so I liked it otherwise.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because it took me a while to realize that penguin girl and Momika were supposed to be the same character. I guess I wasn't looking very closely at the character designs, so...
I realized it right away. I guess because I had seen the movie. I mean, I had rewatched the TV series maybe a couple years ago, and also I didn't remember that Momika was also in possession of a penguin hat. So when I saw the design, I was like, oh, okay, I guess I do more Momika in this movie.
Yeah, I'd forgotten that part of the TV show. Yeah, it's a very interesting choices for the direction on having all the characters, even in their supernatural performances, be still more grounded and just more believably human, I guess. A thing that we cannot say, though, of Sanetoshi, who is the feyest of camp characters of this whole cast.
We don't get a whole lot of we don't get a whole lot of Sanetoshi in these movies. I guess he was a character who probably needed to be cut the most to, I guess, condense this into two films. So we don't get quite as much as like his philosophical ramblings about like the nature of family and how constructive that could be. But otherwise, I think his presence really works as a whole. Again, as a whole, like goes to the past that you can't escape kind of deal.
Yeah, he's a good mouthpiece for what are the things that, what are specifically the negative traits of society that Ikuhara is trying to disseminate in this series. And in a show that's can sometimes be more symbolic over literal, it's good to have at least one intentionally evil character kind of write out the thesis of the show for those who are having a hard time following along.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It reminds me a lot of in the Revolutionary Girl Utena movie, how they had the bad character of oh god, what's his name?
Akio.
Akio, thank you. They had him in the movie because he was in the TV series, and so we have to have him in the movie. But honestly, you didn't really need him in the movie because the story was already kind of functioning as is, and he isn't quite the same character in the movie as he is in the TV show.
The TV show is kind of like a very clear archetype for the concept of patriarchy, and in the movies, he's definitely not that. So, I kind of don't know what they were going for in the movies with him.
Well, I mean, they wanted to see him fall out a window. Obviously, that's the whole reason to have him in the movie. That's a whole other discussion I'm sure we can have. Maybe we could do that for next summer at the movies, the Utena movie, because I'm not sure if patriarchy is exactly what he's going for. I think it was more the negative portrayal of trying to grow up too fast and the negative repercussions of what happens to teenagers when they try to just grow up faster than they really should.
That's fair.
But anyway, Sanetoshi, though, not so subtle, very much, like you were saying, a symbolism of negative familial experiences and the bad cycle that can happen of if you're born into not even a toxic family, but just a not very healthy family. Like, I don't know, maybe they're gangsters, maybe they're terrorists, maybe they do some shady things to earn money. And then seeing your own kids are probably going to inherit that and end up doing that themselves, and why it's necessary to break that cyclical events to basically be better people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and while we don't get a whole lot of this movie, I did enjoy Nikki Sander's performance. I thought he had the right amount of like ominousness to the performance that was necessary. Where he does have a pretty good amount of presence whenever Sanetoshi's on screen.
He does sound like he's having fun.
Yeah.
Like he got to cut loose the most out of all of the performers. He doesn't quite go like full James from Pokemon with the like, ooh, I'm so evil. You will never be able to bring your sister back to life. It's dead time for you. No, he's not quite that over the top, but it's fitting with the tone of this series, but still being evil.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have any thoughts on Kokui's Baby Penguin because it's mostly onomatopoeia and small word fragments, isn't it?
I mean, the penguin does speak, but it is very clearly like it's very clearly Sanetoshi speaking to the penguin. But I do think Kokui does a pretty good job of sounding like very sinister, specifically like trying to convince him like, oh wow, it's like, oh man, this is the world mess up. You guys should just destroy everything. And like,
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep, and saying all of it while having an extremely adorable smile on his face.
I'm sorry, you're right. I completely forgot that, this is the character that is smiling all the time and is kind of higher-pitched, cartoony voice talking about, this world was always rotten, we should just destroy everything. Which is a very nihilistic view of the world, which I'm not sure Ikuhara doesn't believe. I think he was actually kind of advocating for a little bit of that.
I do think, I do believe he does at least think that, and Satoshi is at least very clearly supposed to sort of have a point, like the points in which he does talk about, like, the toxicness of families, or, as referenced in, or as we see referenced in this movie, the concept of everyone kind of being stuck in their own boxes and not really being able to deal with the world. Like, Satoshi does have a point when he talks about those things.
Yes, that's true. And it does tie back into, like you were saying, the 1995 terrorist attack, where it wasn't just people being like, I've got explosions, and I think it would be fun to explode things. It was kind of that doomsday cult mentality of perpetuating the end of the world because they've seen how flawed and broken a lot of the system is. So the solution is not to try to fix it, but to merely cause mass destruction themselves.
Yep.
Which I've heard people try to make the argument that is part of what Penguindrum's actually trying to argue is going to be the solution if people do not improve themselves, or we do not improve society organically. Like, one of the things that's brought up is the way that the children are not really taken care of very well. Japan is notorious for not having a very good child welfare system. That's why you see a lot of kids in anime are like living by themselves while their parents work all the time.
Yep, and we have a whole metaphor for that in this movie.
Yeah, the foreshadowing for the next section. But I guess the point of this movie is that people took that interpretation from the TV show away, that they thought, maybe Ikuhara is trying to argue that we should smash in order to change things. And that, so we have this penguin character, this baby penguin character, who is clearly supposed to be antagonistic and not who we're supposed to cheer for, making those arguments so that we as the audience can know, okay, so the staff is aware that extreme of a measure to fix the world's problems is not what they're advocating for, and that we should actually do the found family thing instead, not the blow stuff up thing.
The world is very messed up, but there are good things in it. Specifically, good people you can find with it, which I think is kind of like the message Ikuhara was trying to go for with I guess the extended scenes in this movie, because there are a few extra scenes that weren't in the TV series that got added into this.
I mean, I'm trying to be very nice to the performers here, and I have mostly good things to say, but I do question, like, what was the point of this movie of, like, really just recutting the episodes into a TV show, aside from, which we'll talk about near the end, some of the changes they made to the finale, because other than that, I didn't really see a whole lot of point, and I'm actually kind of against people who just take episodes from a TV show and cut them into a movie and say, voila, new movie, give me money.
I guess Ikuhara just kind of felt like revisiting it. It is worth noting that originally this was going to be a completely straight compilation movie, but Ikuhara did want to add new scenes, so he specifically went to Kickstarter to get those scenes funded. And you want to know how quickly that Kickstarter got funded?
Well, let's see. Considering that we're still in the middle of the Lackadaisy Kickstarter getting $1 million in a week, I'm going to assume that something like Ikuhara asking for money for animation, that got funded in half a week.
It got funded like a couple of hours.
Oh, okay. Well, that actually is more fitting. I mean, I'm assuming that. Do you know off the top of your head what the amount that they were asking for was?
I don't remember what the exact amount was, but it got funded like almost immediately, and which was a little surprising, both for how quick it was, and also because they very specifically said they wouldn't accept any international money, so it all came from the Japanese audience, and it so got funded like immediately.
Oh, really? Oh, that's why I never heard about it then, because couldn't take international money.
Yep, I would have paid for it, but I guess it would accept my money.
That's interesting too, because I never got a sense of how popular Ikuhara actually is in Japan. I know that in America he's a very niche creator, and that the people who like his stuff really like his stuff. But it's not the kind of thing that a lot of people have even heard of. Like, people have maybe seen Utena imagery and they know, like, she turns into a car, but they haven't actually seen, like, Yurikuma Arashi or Penguindrum, or I don't remember how popular Sarizanmai was in the simulcast season. But anyways, that reaffirms that, okay, there is enough of a support in Japan that is into what Ikuhara is doing, which I guess would explain why he has been allowed to create like 5 different series so far.
Yeah, I don't know how well Utena did, but I do remember Penguindrum specifically actually did sell pretty respectably in the
Okay.
day, so yeah, I guess it does make sense.
So we should probably then, I'm sorry, are we good to move on to from this cast to the next group?
Yep, I guess we're good to move on. So we're going to talk about our main characters, of which we have 4. We have
Yay!
we have Shoba Takakura, Kanba Takakura, Hibari Takakura, and Rigo Oginome. So Shoba is one of the elder brothers of the Takakura family. And so he's kind of the very nice and sweet. He's kind of the very nice and sweet boy who just wants to do right by his family, and is just a very nice boy. But as we discover later on, he does have a little bit more going on than what appears on the surface, because we discover during the second movie, the Takakuras are in fact not a real family. And of these 3, he's actually the only one who is specifically related to their parents, which definitely explains why he's the one who feels the most guilt over the terrorist incident they caused.
Yeah, he doesn't himself do anything wrong, but that guilt stays with him, and for fair enough reason. I'm sure none of us here would be living very well if we had to live with the knowledge that our parents kind of maybe did a terrorism back in the day.
Yeah, and continuing Kanba is the other brother of the Takakura family. Compared to Shoba, he's kind of a lot more rough around the edges, more of a ladies' man. And
Oh yeah.
as briefly mentioned, he is not actually from the Takakura family. He was actually adopted from the Natsumes and brought into the Takakura family after his father died. So,
Which, correct me if I'm wrong, but Kanaba's dad was also in the terrorist cult too. Is that correct?
yeah, his dad was also in the terrorist cult.
Okay, that's what I thought. Because yeah, there's in the funeral scene of Kanaba's biological parents, the Takakura adults are like, and now you two are going to be siblings. And you get the sense that they had already known each other from their mutual interests, those mutual interests being anarchy and terrorism. So I just wanted to make sure I wasn't misinterpreting where his parents came from originally.
Yep. Yeah, as continued, Kappa is is a possible rough around the edges, willing to do whatever it takes to protect Hibari, and as we discover as the story progresses, those feelings are not entirely platonic. We'll say that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then we have Hibari, who is the little sister of the Nakakura family. She suffers from terminal anime girl disease. It's very unfortunate.
She's right up there with all of the key Kyoto Annie girls, with all the Jun Maeda characters. Yeah, she gonna die, and that's gonna drive the plot.
Yep, and she does in fact die at the very beginning of the story. But then she's brought back to life by a magic penguin hat, which occasionally possesses her and causes her to take on a different personality.
It makes her not lactose intolerant anymore.
Yep. And then, as we discover later on, she was in fact adopted into the Takakuras, because she was originally abandoned by her mother for reasons that aren't really explained and don't really need to be. She was just abandoned. And and eventually, Shoma met her and befriended her, and eventually decided to bring her into the family after a couple of very unfortunate events. And then lastly, Ringo, as mentioned before, is the younger sister of Momoka. Very curiously, she was actually born on the same day Momoka died. So she has convinced herself that she is in fact Momoka's reincarnation, and that actually kind of draws a lot of, actually kind of implants a lot of Ringo's motivations in the first film, because in the first film she is introduced as Tabuki's stalker.
Mm-hmm. She's she's hiding out under his floorboards, listening, like spying, listening to him, and uh, she's got that unfortunate syndrome where you're a young girl who a slightly older friend of the family character is like a couple grades older than you. You develop a crush on them, and you can't quite let that go. But it's also a bit unfortunate that she feels the need not just to be like her sister, but to actually take her place because her parents are very upset that they lost a daughter in an explosion and are basically. She's trying to compensate for a dead sibling, basically, which is not a healthy thing to do.
Yeah, very much not so, and a lot of her behavior in the first half of the show is not very healthy. Thankfully, she does get better, but it does take a while.
Also, I'm pretty sure that if you were born on the day someone else died, that's not how reincarnation works, because you were already in development while they were still alive.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
But anyway,
So,
getting into who plays these characters. For Shoba, we have Jack Stansbury. For Kanba, we have Jeremy Gee. For Himaru, we have Donna Bella Linton. And for Ringo, we have Margaret McDonald. Jack Stansbury is a bit of a fresher face at Sentai, but he's been making a real he's been making a real splash this past year and has played such characters as the Debt Collector in Akame Maid War, Shutaro Mendo in the Urusei Yatsura remake, and biggest thing, Aquamarine Hoshino in the dub for Oshinoko. And then
I've heard good things about it.
yeah, he's really fantastic in that dub.
No, I mean, I've heard the show itself was good, too.
Yeah, it's a very good show. I think you would find it interesting.
Mm-hmm. I'm too busy watching American cartoons these days. Sorry, I just watched all of Haley's on It, which is a new Disney Plus series. So I need to get back more into anime watching these days.
Continuing, Jeremy Gee has played such characters as Keiji Akashi in Haikyuu, Kaiji in the new dub for Kaiji, and Goro Amamiya in Oshinoko. And then Donabelle Linton has played such characters as Gladys Moon in Farming Life in Another World, Ron in the Urusei Yatsura remake, and Ai Oshino in Oshinoko. The reason I brought up Oshinoko 3 times because it's because there actually is a connection between those 3 characters, and if that was the partial inspiration for casting those actors in this movie, that's a pretty funny joke.
Okay. It could have been. I haven't seen that show to compare it, but it's not unlike voice directors to do a little bit of stunt casting.
To make a long story short, Oshinoko is kind of centered around a reincarnation plot about about a doctor being reincarnated as the child of their favorite idol, and the doctor is played by Jeremy Gee, and the reincarnated kid is actually played by Jack Stansbury. So, and the idol was Donna Bella Linton, so that's a really fun connection.
So yeah, the ages are off there in this comparison, because in this show they're all around the same age, whereas that one there's a little bit of generational gaps going on.
Yeah, but still just a very funny connection again, given everything going on with Kamba.
And it gives me even more incentive to check out that show.
Yep.
So thank you for that pitch.
Yep, and then lastly, Margaret McDonald, who plays his characters as Kana in Afterloss, Hadi in Hamatora, and a bit of a throwback, Rika Takadashi in Love, Shunibyo, and Other Delusions.
I'm so glad you mentioned that one, because that's where I first heard her. That was a well-timed dub, and that came out, I think, a little after Penguindrum, in that we're starting to get a little better and more ambitious with our dubbing over at Sentai.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, let me check the release on that one, because I think it was post 2011, but let me check. Oh yeah, 2012. Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah, that would be right after. Anyways,
Yeah.
proceed.
Yeah. Anyway, I guess we can start with Ringo because we probably can talk about the Takagura siblings together. But
Yeah.
yeah, Ringo was a very interesting character. In fact, she's probably my favorite character in the show, which is definitely pretty wild because this character does a lot that is extremely problematic, and I feel like in most other instances, this character would probably be pretty redeemable. Because, as mentioned before, she does a lot of stalking in the first half, and a lot of that stalking ultimately culminates in a bit where she actually does attempt to assault Tabuki, which is which even considering how silly a lot of this show can be at times, that instance is actually treated really dramatically, which I do appreciate, and yeah, it's a lot. And yet somehow she does manage to surprisingly get redeemed after that, and it helps that even though a lot of her actions are pretty messed up, there is a lot to her actions that you can at least somewhat sympathize with. In that, as mentioned before, a lot of her motivation is in the fact that she's trying to compensate for her dead sibling by thinking she has to be that dead sibling, and a lot of her actions are motivated by that. So again, I really like Ringo a lot as a character, which is why I really hate to say that this was probably my least favorite performance in the dub.
Oh, you had such a good thing going there, and then all of a sudden, doo.
Yeah, and it's kind of a shame because it's really kind of a shame because as much shade as I have and will continue to draw at the dub for the TV series, I do remember that Emily Nays was really good in that dub. Ironically, she was actually the best performance in that dub. So, really, it's kind of a shame we sort of got the reverse here. And, I mean, there are things I do like about Margaret's performance. I think she does do a really... I think funny enough, she actually is really good at the whole, like, soccer side of Ringo whenever she needs to, like, be really menacing or scheming. I think Margaret's, like, surprisingly fun in those bits. The thing I had a bit of a harder time by with Marco's performance was a lot of the stuff with everything surrounding her sister or how her relationship with Shoma kind of develops over the course of the story. Like basically whenever she kind of needs to be, I guess, like really dramatic or like sad about something, I thought the performance was like a lot shakier than I would have expected, and it was kind of a bit of a letdown.
I'm gonna chalk that up to a direction thing because the Margaret's performance in the funnier scenes are definitely leaps and bounds above the dramatic scenes, but that's kind of fitting with the tone of the show favoring funny scenes for this character. There's a scene where she gets really, really mad at Shoma because Yuri says, "I thought you had a crush on Shoma." And it's basically that mentality is throwing Ringo for a loop because she was so convinced that she was in love with Tabuki, and so she like starts bitch slapping Shoma and is really leaning into how he's thrown off her entire plan because it was destined for them to be together, and that was funnier. Like that, I believe that
Yeah,
Margaret's performance in that section more than I did, like you were saying, the dramatic parts.
yeah,
Those were harder to
yeah.
believe.
It's funny you bring that up because like I thought she was fine like when like at the sort of that bit when she was like slapping Shoma around. Was that being like how dare you do this in a really exaggerated way? But then when that whole moment gets serious and she's like why did you have to tell me I'm me and that was a moment in the show that I thought was really powerful, and I thought Mark's performance didn't quite have the weight that moment needed to, and it was a bit of a letdown because I felt like thematically that probably is one of the most important bits in the series, and I really kind of wish I was delivered a little better.
Well, were there any scenes, not just from Margaret, but from anyone in the show that made you teary-eyed at all, like even a little weepy?
Probably in the second movie, I would say like the whole bit with like, yeah, I would say the whole bit with Yuri and Momoko, where like Momoko is trying to stop Yuri from getting killed by her father. I thought that whole bit was handled really well, and actually did feel a little teary-eyed there. Where
Okay.
Momoko was comforting her.
And that kind of works because neither Yuri or Momoko have funny moments. They never have slapstick moments. that the actors have to also fit into. So, yeah, I think that Margaret's less serious moments, or I'm sorry, the way that it doesn't feel as it doesn't hit as much with you, and I kind of had the same thought too, is solely because the direction it was favored her comedic moments, and it's just harder for us to take the serious moments seriously after we've seen her do wacky things with frogs and poisons and curry swapping and all those shenanigans.
Yeah, I will say I do think Margaret did improve a lot in like the back half of the second movie, specifically when she was kind of setting everything up for like the big sacrifice towards the end. I did think in those moments she was actually surprisingly strong in the dramatic chops. I just kind of wish that was there during the earlier parts of these movies.
Now, if I remember correctly, all of the characters that we've kind of talked about are a victim of some sort of childhood trauma that is making them repeat mistakes of the previous generation, their parents or just something they've been born into. Ringo's actions of like trying to be her sister and trying to fulfill what is written in her sister's diary, which she thinks of as like prophecy, that's not really the result of uh, repeating the cycles of toxic family necessarily. It's much more about it's more wacky, silly, and also finding found family than it is about disputing toxic cyclical events, right?
I mean, Ringo stuff is a bit silly, but there is something. I mean, but I do feel there is a lot thematic important there, which is kind of why she's, and which is why, at least honestly, I would say for like the first half of the series, he's kind of more the protagonist than our the siblings are in some sense,
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
which does make sense because this series is definitely a lot about identity and kind of like how your family does define you when you kind of have to be your own person, and that's a pretty important thing with Ringo because that's been informed. He's literally trying to be her sister because she kind of has convinced herself that's the only way her parents can get back together, even though she can't really bring herself to realize it's never really going to happen. She kind of can't get back what she's lost and can't really bring herself to come to terms with that. And a lot of her arc is kind of about dealing with that and realizing she is in fact her own person through a lot of her interactions with Sakakura and Shoumei specifically.
Good point. Good point. The idea of being learning to be your own person and not be stuck in the shadow of being someone else or being a sibling rather. You're right. That's a good thing that makes her actions not necessarily redeemable but understandable. I
Yeah.
do think that from a writing perspective that the lines that she was given like in the English script here are the most the most wacky, the most cartoonish of them, and it makes her performance distinct from the rest because the three that we're going to get to here, the Takakura siblings, speaking wise, they're all kind of similar. I feel like so. Yeah, Ringo's definitely a unique standout, and fittingly enough, the protagonist of the first movie.
Yep. And then getting into the Takakura siblings. Let's see. Who should we talk about first?
Let's start with Himari because her she has to split. Donna has to split her performance between two voices. She has to be the domestic, good little sister character, and then she has to be the possessed penguin character throughout the show.
This is like the third thing I've heard Donna in. I think she's also so not new, but not new, but she has been. But she has kind of been getting more stuff over like the last year or so. So this is like the third
Mm-hmm.
thing I've heard her in, and then the other couple of things I heard her in, I kind of had mixed feelings on her performances. I liked her Rod in Ursa Yatsura, but I thought she was better at I thought she was better at like the really loud and angry side of the character than she was like the whole cutesy booty thing. And
Yeah.
funny enough, I kind of have a similar feeling with her performance here, where
Yeah.
where I actually like her a lot whenever she's like the penguin hat version of the character more
Yeah.
than the normal version of the character.
Well, this movie doesn't give her a whole lot of moments being as cutesy, because in the TV show we see a lot more of her in her human form, where she is like trying to cook for the family, trying to keep them all together, just trying to create domestic bliss out of a very rotten situation, which was heavily contrasted with the I'd say like every other episode where we got to see the penguin persona, because that penguin character is like foul mouthed and dissing the characters, like the complete opposite personality. And I agree that Donna excels more in that penguin character in this movie than the cutesier moments, but that's also because the movie gives her more penguin scenes than the cutesier scenes. I feel like she spends an equal amount of time in a coma or as a penguin. Not so like there's one scene in the cutesier moments where she's either cooking curry or making cabbage rolls, and they're just not as frequent in this movie.
Yeah, Himari does still get a lot of important stuff, particularly in the second movie where we get her backstory and like how she was abandoned by her parents and kind of found family in Shoumei. And
Mm-hmm.
and I remember that being a part of the TV series I found really interesting and like really important thematically as far as the whole themes around family and sort of like and sort of things like being able to find people who care about you and being your own person. I thought a lot of Hibari's stuff also encapsulated that really well. And
Yeah,
while I thought Donna's performance here was like fine, and there were definitely some parts of her delivery I thought could have been a little stronger. And I guess if I were being honest, I am probably. I guess my mind is probably doing a little bit more of a comparison to the TV anime, because in the TV anime, Hibari was voiced by Monica Rio, and while again I have a lot of problems with the TV dub, Monica was one of the better performances in that dub, and I mean it's Monica Rio.
you got stalking literally voicing the character, so I'm gonna try not to make that comparison because I don't remember like I remember Monica voicing that character. I don't remember how I could directly compare it to this because Donna's going for I feel like a more subdued, more in the tone of all the other characters we've been talking about, a more laid back portrayal of the character. So that Monica voice wouldn't quite fit in the tone that they're going for in this cast.
I mean that's fair. I just do remember Monica's performance being a little more balanced with both versions. Whereas with Donna, I think the Penguin hat on the performance is definitely where it's at its strongest. Where everything else is like, it's everything else. It's like it's fine, but there are definitely parts of it I feel could be, as I feel could definitely be a little bit stronger with the dramatic shots,
Yeah.
which I do feel is a little, but I do feel is a little unfortunate because I do feel like a lot of Imari's more dramatic moments are pretty important to the theme of the story. So
Th-
I do
yeah,
wish it
they
was a little
are. Yeah.
stronger.
Yeah, when we find out why they're not just the backstory with her being adopted into this family, but also the backstory with 2H or H2 is really important to her as well. Like she was part of this trio of young girls who were like auditioning to be idols, basically, and she didn't get to be part of the group because she unfortunately caused her mom to end up in the hospital, and she felt so guilty about it that she, kind of took herself out of it. And the dramatic parts of that, especially that scene where Donna has to portray like a kind of a younger Himari who's upset that she didn't get the ribbons that she wanted. That was definitely the flatter performance where we really needed a stronger emotional resonance, a more bratty sounding character, and it wasn't quite there in this movie.
Yeah, I do wish that part was stronger.
Yeah. So, just kind of a part that I guess I should go back and rewatch that part in the TV series because there's just some things that the choices they made in this dub that were on the more subdued side, and that seems to be a conscious choice that the ADR director made.
Mm-hmm. And then,
And I
uh,
yeah, feel that same way about our two brothers coming up here. Um, Not very like over the top voices, but carries the dramatic moments pretty well. I think Jack is pretty strong in those scenes where he's grasping with the guilt over what his family did and having to live with that himself.
Yeah, I would say between the two, Jack is probably stronger, and I'd actually go as far to say I think overall Jack is probably the best performance in the dub for me.
You might be right. I think the scene that maybe would be a good contender to illustrate that is when he's apologizing to Ringo near the end of the second movie. And even though Ringo is insistent that, you didn't kill my sister, Shoma is absolutely heartbroken over feeling responsible that it was his parents who caused the explosion on the train that caused that caused Ringo to lose her sister. And that's a good performance by Jack.
Yeah. I really liked his delivery during that scene. It's definitely the right amount of like it's really being torn up by guilt, and I really appreciated how he handled that. And then I also thought he was like really good during that during the scene towards the middle of the movie where he's confronting Kanba over Kanba having teamed up with the terror group their parents were in, and definitely like the frustration he's feeling over Kanba, like kind of simply turning his back on everything just for Himari's sake. And I thought the Jack did a really good job in that scene, and I also liked how Jeremy handled that scene too. I thought he was really good in that moment.
Jeremy doesn't get as much of a range, isn't allowed as much of a range as Jack does, just by the nature of his character.
Yeah.
But his player persona, it never becomes unbearable. Like you see this character, you see this Kanba character, and the things he does, and yes, you kind of want to punch him in the face for it, but you see it's all because his uncle keeps saying, we need money to keep the house. We need money for medicine for your sister. We need money. We need money. And he's just doing the only thing he can do to keep the family together.
Yeah, it definitely is very interesting that while Shoumei is like the one who was clearly more guilt-ridden over the past, it's very interesting that it's very interesting that Kanba is the one who, as mentioned by Sadachi, is the one who is like very specifically cursed by the past and kind of, in essence, carrying on the will of their parents, even if he may not necessarily want to.
I mean, they both kind of represent the two halves of how to deal with trauma. One of them is there's technically three. One of them is to accept it and kind of lean into it, which is what Kanaba seems to be doing. The whole, I can't change the past, so I'm just going to lean into it more because, well, I've already come this far. Might as well keep going. I'll turn I'll turn backwards to God and walk ass backwards into hell, basically. Yep. Whereas with Shoma's gone for the freeze mentality of just completely unable to process the guilt, and that's not healthy at all. Neither of them have taken the healthy option, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, I will say, while I did come around a lot of Jeremy's performance, I did think he maybe needed a little bit to get into character, which I did feel was a little unfortunate because have you seen any of the Kaiji dub yet?
No, I have not.
You should. He's as much before he does play Kaiji, that is actually really good in that show.
And that's a character that's is not really so serious all the time, right? Like he gets exasperated by the betting situation he's in, right?
Yeah, he gets exasperated. He gets exasperated a lot, but he also can be. He also can be really dramatic when the time calls for it, and definitely has a lot of moments where he has to show a lot of anger towards the system, and we do see that in Jeremy's performance in the back half of the second movie, particularly by the time he's joined the terror group. I think that Jeremy's performance really shines there, but in the early parts of the films, I think the direction with his performance isn't quite as clear. And so I had a bit of a harder time telling exactly what he was going for. But what he was going for on Terrorist, I really liked Ree's performance there.
That's unfortunate. Just the line. I liked him when he was going full on terrorist.
That is unfortunate.
Maybe the one critique I might have on Jeremy's Kanba is that he does sound a bit older than I thought the character should sound necessarily. I'm not sure if he had a similar reaction, but it took me a little while to get to
He,
the pitch that he was going for. It's just because I
he,
know that they're high school students basically, so I have this internal voice that I expect them to reach, and it was a little bit lower than that pitch.
yeah. I will say it is kind of similar to the voice he uses for Kaiji. It is a little softer though, so I guess he did try to tone it back a little bit to sound more like a teenager. But yeah, I do agree. It does maybe sound a little older than the character does.
To give a compliment right back after that, though, it also was not monotone. It's very easy to take a character like Kanba, who has a very utilitarian view of the world, just a very, I'm going to make money the only way I can, and if it involves doing some crime, I'm going to do that. And it's not a very flat performance at all. There's color in there. There is exasperation when, like, the girls find him and confront him on his heartbreaking ways. And then getting more extreme when he's talking to like his uncle about how much is it going to take? How much is it going to take to keep the house? All right, I will do the thing that I need to do. I'm not going to tell the audience what that is, but you can probably guess. Although I know you said that he joins the terrorist group near the end, which, yeah, he's clearly rejoining the group that his family was a part of. But I gotta admit, in watching the TV series, I thought he was like drug dealing or doing some other stuff that would really earn him some money fast, and it's not quite clear what he's doing in this movie to earn money, or maybe it's clear to you.
I mean, it doesn't really explain. I mean, even in the TV series, it doesn't really explain what he's doing for the terror group. All we know is that they're giving him money, and then I guess once we get the full reveal, he just fully decides to join in with the group, and then he's just going around doing crime.
I guess. I mean, it could be anything from like he'd be doing the mob thing of like protection money or something. Where you leave it up to your interpretation. Whatever crime you think Kanba's doing, that's what he's doing.
I do. Yeah. So it's a bit of interesting with like both the TV series and the films that I do appreciate it. Is that when we do get that whole revelation with Kanba? At first, you are meant to think that Kanba has gotten back in touch with his parents, and that they're the ones. And that if they're not necessarily the ones directing his actions, they are at least helping. They're at least helping him out and supporting what he's doing. And then we find out that nope. Kanba is actually quite literally talking to ghosts. His parents are both long dead.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they ain't running a Soma shop anymore, which I think was their cover in the TV show, if I remember correctly. I don't know, it's been a while.
No, even in the TV show, you were meant to. Even in the TV show with the Soma shop, we were meant to think, oh, okay, that's the meeting place. That's where their parents are. And then when characters who aren't Kanba go in there, it's like, oh no, it's abandoned. So I guess it's kind of supposed to be, Kanba's delusion in a sense, because as mentioned before, he is very quite literally being haunted by the past. So it makes sense that he's the one seeing their dead parents.
Yep. Yeah, this movie is very in tone of in the spirit of, do not follow the family business if the family business is crime or just bad for society or people in general, because it's not good. No, don't do that.
Yeah, very much do not do that.
Yeah. So it's a range of performances that carry the more over-the-top scenes. Probably could have done a little bit better on the dramatic scenes. I guess with the amount of dialogue that they had, there was probably a level of fatigue, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
That is just kind of hard to get over.
Yeah. As mentioned before, I do think Jack's performance was probably the most consistent overall. Everyone else I did generally but I do think. But I do think needed a little bit of time to kind of fully grasp their character, or needed maybe a bit of stronger direction in certain scenes. And then, as mentioned before with Margaret, I did like her a lot with the soccer side of Ringo, but I had a harder time back into the dramatic stuff.
It's unfortunate. It's like, I like the character when they were terrorists or stalkers.
Yeah, boy, it really is unfortunate.
Hmm.
Uh,
But
was there anything
that's
else?
Ikuhara for you.
Yep. Was there anything else you wanted to mention, or you get to move on to final thoughts?
I think we should start wrapping up the final thoughts on this because people listening to this probably got the sense that, yeah, we liked the content good enough, but we're slightly underwhelmed by some of the performances. And I'd like to dispel most of that because it is competent. This is a very competent film that if you are trying to decide between watching in the English or the Japanese, the English is perfectly serviceable. Nothing is lost in translation. You may even need to listen in English because of all the dialogue. You don't have to follow along at the all of the reading. But yeah, I do think that the actual performances are a little below the level where we want to be. It's like, this is a perfectly fine cake, but it could have used like maybe a little extra frosting and maybe some strawberries on it just to make it that punch that this content really needed.
Yeah. I will say again, between the two, I would heavily recommend this over the dub of the TV series, which really, which I know in a sense does kind of sound like fate for you because I had made it very clear I don't really like that particular dub very much. But I do think this one is a notable improvement. It is a little rougher around the edges than I would have wanted it to be, but there are things about it I like.
And so since this is an upgrade, quality-wise in dub from the original TV series, what does this mean that you can recommend the movie over the TV show, or would you still recommend the TV show as opposed to the movie for newbies?
For newbies, I would still generally recommend the TV show. I mean, these movies are fine, and they do get most of the themes across. But the first movie in particular, it does kind of suffer a little bit from like the parts they cut around. Like the first movie, you can definitely tell is very much a compilation movie. The second one feels a lot more put together as a movie. Which
I suppose.
Yeah, which again does make sense because even in the TV series, a lot of the first half of the show is just mostly set up for the second half. So in a sense, that does make sense, but like as a whole, the TV series is a little bit more cohesive.
Yeah, and it benefits from the structure of a TV show as well. You have the very clear set up morals or dilemmas of a TV episode, so that once the episode is over, it's kind of, you've gotten the point of the episode. Whereas in this movie, you have to keep track of multiple different threads and themes that they're going for, and it's a lot to take in. I'm not sure if I can't really imagine myself watching this in a theater. I perfectly enjoyed watching this as like just on my couch and kind of taking breaks in between, just pausing it at certain moments just to walk away for a bit and coming back to finishing up a little bit later, again, like you would with a TV show.
Yeah. I definitely enjoyed my time with these. I'm definitely glad I finally got to check out these movies because I was waiting all last year to see who picked them up. So I'm glad they got picked up and glad they did end up getting a dub.
Yeah, it's just kind of nice to see a little bit more of this franchise after not seeing any acknowledgement of it over the last 10 years, right?
In general, no matter which version to go with, Penguindrum is a really interesting series. So a lot of strong themes when it comes to the ideas of found family, troubled family relationships, a little bit of philosophical waxing over terrorism, and most importantly, the importance of finding yourself and being your own person. It's still going a lot of interesting things, but I think all of them are really fascinating and they come together in a pretty neat way that I appreciate.
Yes, it comes together with cute penguins doing wacky stuff in the background.
I do love the penguins.
Yeah, so that is the Penguindrum movies, and by extension, kind of talking about the TV show as well.
This was a lot of fun. I'm really glad we got to do this.
So where can they watch the movies? I'm assuming that the dub for the movies is streaming somewhere?
In fact, the dub for the movies is currently streaming on High Dive. Unfortunately, as of this recording, it is only the sub version of the movies that are streaming on High Dive. I imagine Yeah, I imagine the dub will probably get added eventually, but not quite sure yet when that will be.
Mm-hmm.
So if you
Which is
so if you do want to watch the dub, you're gonna have to put it up in the Blu-ray.
yeah. So. Oh, and the TV series is also up on High Dive right now too, right? Both in sub and dub.
Yeah. The TV series is up, sub and dub on High Dive. If you want to buy the TV series Blu-ray, you're probably out of luck because that is long out of print.
Yeah, and what might not be a bad thing because if I remember discussions you and I had a while ago, the Blu-ray wasn't even really that good, was it?
Yeah, the quality of the Blu-rays was quite bad.
Yeah. I mean, it's not good when your Blu-ray is like DVD quality footage, which I have the DVD version, totally fine as it is. But yeah, you would expect a slightly better upgrade to high def when they go to Blu-ray, and I guess they didn't quite get that for the Penguindrum TV show.
Yeah, it's also really weird because I mean, like Sentai's re-releasing a lot of other shows for that time period, and even stuff that was a little rough around the edges, they actually re-released with like slightly improved video quality. So you would expect that would have happened with Penguindrum at some point, and it never did.
Nope.
This is literally the only new release we've gotten for Penguindrum from Sentai since the TV series. So yeah, it's weird.
So, it is. Although I'm wondering if they were kind of testing the waters on how people responded to the movies before checking to see if maybe there's interest in re-releasing the TV series again.
Yeah, I would say the interest would be quite good because we didn't mention this, but we actually had a little bit of trouble with figuring out a recording deal for these movies
Yeah.
because as it turns out, the Blu-rays sold out almost immediately for pre-orders. So so we had a hard time figuring out if we were even going to be able to get our hands on this in time.
Which isn't unusual for Sentai releases. A lot of times when they have movie releases or like LE releases, there are times where they kind of go out of print initially, or rather they run out of their pre-orders. I just didn't expect it for this particular franchise.
Yeah, like that was really shocking.
Yeah.
But very much appreciated. So yeah, you see Sentai and band is there. Give us the release of the TV series. I wouldn't even mind if they maybe gave us a new dub of the TV series with this cast. I think I'd take that.
I wouldn't oppose it. I just wouldn't want to lose the original dub because I don't like it when there's re-releases of stuff and you lost media. I don't like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to lose the original dub completely, but I mean, if we could get a new dub on top of that, that would be pretty cool. But,
sure.
2 cakes. Give us 2 cakes.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, do what Discotech is doing with the Digimon the movie release, where they're giving us a new dub for the original for the movies, but they're also retaining the original 2000 release of the movie, where it was just 3 movies stitched together.
Mm-hmm.
So, what else? So, where can the people find this podcast if they're so inclined?
Yeah, so Weird and Talk podcast. You can find. We have new episodes going up every 2 weeks normally, and we're usually on YouTube or you can find our audio versions on places like Spotify, Podbean, all the podcast places. You can also follow us on social media on the ever-sinking ship that is Twitter. I'm not going to call it whatever else feels like calling it. It's Twitter. It's Twitter.
We had the same discussion. We were recording an episode that's probably won't be released until after this one. And yeah, that was like, we're gonna call it Twitter, guys. We're not gonna call it the new thing. So you know what Twitter is. We're still there.
Yeah, so we're on Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, etc. And if you'd like to support us, you can give us a one-time donation for our Ko-fi, or you can be one of our lovely patrons. And before we wrap up tonight, we're gonna shout them out. In the $5 tier, we have Megan's mom and dad, Michelle Travis, and Victor Marabona. And in the $10 tier, we have Anthony Brown, Carly Lessicow, Julie W., Kimber Soup, Merck Valenti, and Otaku Anthony. Thanks for your support, guys. We always really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much, and I hope that you have been enjoying this Summer at the Movies extravaganza.
Okay, so Noah, where can the people find you?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at NoahClue. I'm currently, let's see, it's the middle of summer right now. Well, 2/3 of the way through summer. So, probably posting pictures of my family going around town doing weird summery stuff, or having discussions about animation from around the world. I, of course, support the writer and actors strike that's going on right now, which unfortunately does not really extend to voiceover artists or animators, but those folks should absolutely be given similar protection against reduced streaming residuals, basically everything else that the people are striking about. I'll probably be ranting about that on social media. So,
Yep, absolutely. Pay your people.
yeah.
Just pay them.
And where can the fine folks find you, Jet?
Yeah. I'm Jet. You can find me on Twitter at Dividega, where I'll usually be talking about anime or manga or comics or the strikes that are currently going on. Just pay people. It's not that hard. And
I can't imagine. I can't imagine anyone who's listening to our podcast is in the anti workers group. Although, if you are, what are you doing here?
yeah. And aside from that, you can also find me on another Podcast Ode, where I'm usually talking about anime news alongside fellow Dub Tacos Andrew. And you can also find me on my new blog, The Nerdy Abyss, where most of the time I'm usually just doing a wiki write-ups of whatever Shonen Jump stuff I'm reading. And with that, I guess that more or less wraps things up for tonight. Thanks for joining me, Noah.
Not a problem. Thank you for inviting me. And all you people, stay tuned, because next episode is our very big finale to Summer at the Movies, where we will get into, well, it's a big surprise, although if you check the schedule, you know what it is. But let's just say that's going to be a musical extravaganza.
Yeah, I think you guys will be really excited with this one. But,
Indeed.
yeah, thanks for joining us all, and until next time, Otaku on, and have a good evening.
Aloha, and welcome to Rock and Roll Night. Welcome to Rock and Roll Night. You're a rock and roll man. Penguindrum!